Terrifying, because most of you have been teaching longer than me, and I don't want to feel like I'm teaching you all how to suck eggs. So I'm just going to tell you a bit about what I've been doing in computer science and what I've found has worked. So in computer science we have to learn some technical issues, technical skills, and we have some issues with those. And any of you who do anything that requires a lot of practice, so particularly things like music, you will know that in order to be skillful you need to do a lot of it. We also know that some students will do this practice and some of them won't. And there are some skills that some students will just pick up a lot more naturally than others. This idea of purposeful practice is another one that they really struggle with. My year 10s and 11s have figured out that just mucking about in Python for a couple of hours is practice. It isn't, and it's not good enough. So hopefully we've been working on that this year. So we've been kind of thinking about coaching them into what purposeful practice is. I've been trying to set more programming homework, and I've been thinking about doing extra support. I did have year 11s and a year 10 in yesterday for some extra support. Problem with that is it creates an enormous workload, as I'm sure you all know. The more homework you set, the more marking you've got to do, which is no fun for anyone, particularly when you've got umpteen other things to be doing as well. So I came up with this idea, my programming wizards. They even have these. So basically how this works is when we do programming in class, students who have shown themselves to be more ahead of the others, if that makes sense, sort of ahead of their peers, are given the opportunity to be a programming wizard. And what this means is they get this little hat and it gets stuck on their monitor, and if any of the other students have an issue with whatever it is they are programming, they can go to an expert for help before they come to me. So it comes from this sort of the three before me kind of idea. Go and try and find out for themselves. Ask an expert, a wizard, somebody wearing the hat, or me. And I'm the last one they should come to, is the idea. So I started this with year 10 last year, and they quite enjoyed it. We'll have a look at some feedback in a second. Year 10 this year a little bit more reluctant, but they're a bigger group, and fewer of them are further ahead, if that makes sense. So I think we're going to have to do a bit more coaching and training before we find out if that works. So what I have got is some feedback that I took from last year's year 10. So they were pretty positive about it. They thought, yeah, it was really good. I got help much faster than I would have done if I'd been waiting for a miss. The wizard helped me solve my problem. Having more people around, the change in the language of the explanation was useful because they were talking to each other in their own language rather than me trying to bring it down to a way that they're going to be able to understand it, which sometimes is harder than other times, whereas a student is always going to be able to help another student in a way that they answer a question. In terms of improvement, I've got mixed reviews in terms of the improvements. Some of them more useful than others. The most popular improvement being they need to be wearing a real hat. I think my favourite was the Gandalf impersonation, which they did start doing towards the end, which I thought was funny. But there were a couple of useful things in there. So having experts in specific areas is something that I'm looking into this year. And also a bit more coaching, a bit more training for the wizards so that they don't overcomplicate their answer. Because I had one student in particular, I don't know if you know Alex Rennie in year 11 this year, who is a superstar and is amazing at programming, but tends to give the other students answers that they can't really comprehend. So I think a little bit more coaching is required. So with that in mind, I sort of thought, how can I boil this down in a way that's going to be useful to everybody? So I started off with volunteers. Doesn't always work, as I found this year with year 10. But if you can identify individuals in your class, which if you know your classes as well as I know you will do, is going to be really, really easy, who are ahead of the others. Allow those experts, depending on how you set up your room or your learning space, let them move around or let the students go to them. It depends on the class dynamic more than anything. And also some coaching. Make sure you get that coaching in. I think that's what I didn't quite do right last year that we're going to fix this year. And also I'm just going to fill it with merits, particularly for year 11, to get them a bit more engaged in it. Just to think about sort of the impact we had in computer science. So there were mostly positive impacts. I was seeing an improvement in the weaker students, and I was seeing programmes that were built in a high quality, but we were getting some issues that I need to fix this year, where they were not necessarily demonstrating their full understanding of the code that they've written, which we will work on this year. Just lastly, before I finish, this is an example of 2 programmes from one of my current Year 11s that she wrote last year. This one the first one is earlier in the year, and it's an okay programme. It does what it's supposed to do. It's maybe over-commented a little bit, and then you look at the one on the other side, and that's after she's had some support from a couple of experts, and she's using much more sophisticated methods to solve a problem. So that's Ask the Expert, programme on wizards and computer science.